True Story of Gina Hall, Video 11. The dominoes began to fall. Let's go back to the Barbell Club Tuesday morning. The barbell conversation is when the dominoes began to fall. It was when King learned that somehow we knew the family of the missing girl had been calling and that the sister knew Steve, Epperly's first name. And if she knew, others knew. Again, King contradicting Fisher about which day this specific barbell gathering happened. No matter which day, most believe that Epperly went to the police to let them know he had been with the missing girl because of his best friend King's encouragement. The composed story. King heard the radio announcement at 9:15 a.m. Tuesday morning of a girl missing, and from the description, now wearing a white jumpsuit, which I would have never said, and the car being found on Hazel Hollow Road, said he knew then that the girl was the girl Epperly had left the Marriott with. Interestingly, another account tells that he heard the radio announcement on his way to his 8 a.m. morning class at RU. So he would have already been right there at RU, where Epperly was working, and could have easily told him. Either way, after King heard the radio announcement, he did not go straight to see Epperly. He went to the Barbell Club. And what is not known by most are the exact Barbell Club conversations that were being had around the water cooler Tuesday morning, early. According to King's own statement, he got to the Barbell Club and Jan Fisher said the girl's sister had called. Fisher told everyone that Gina's sister had been calling him and that I had called his mother, which would have included details about my disturbing phone conversation with Gina when she was named, or when she named Steve. And this conversation was the hot topic, according to others' statements. The water cooler conversation was reported in every account of every single Barbell Club participant. And it was those conversations that most likely prompted King's next move, not the radio announcement. After hearing the sister has been calling, and she knows Steve's name, King left the Barbell Club and went to RU and found Steve and told him, according to King, what he had heard on the radio and that it looked bad for him. King said Epperly wanted to know who all King had told and what they said, and to go back to the club and tell them not to mention all of this, to be quiet. And he did. And they listened. Another point, if the radio was the reason, then why would Epperly be worried about the Barbell guys and their gossip? In my opinion, King learned that morning that we knew about Steve, and he then went to tell Epperly. And then Epperly came to tell he had been with the missing girl for one reason only, because he had been named. And the other guys at the Barbell Club, the same ones from the Marriott, knew about Gina from the Sunday afternoon horseshoe picnic. Those conversations. I believe a picnic deliberately organized to make the Sunday afternoon appear normal. Pawns. This conversational event is when the dominoes began to fall, and I wonder if Epperly even knew that Gina had named him on the phone. Maybe, but consider this. Had he, I might not be here. I might have ended up in that truck with Romano. My bet is that DeHart or someone else forced Gina to call while Epperly took the Monte Carlo up to the dead-end turnaround, leaving behind someone to carry out a simple task, have the girl call home. Epperly the most likely driver of the Monte Carlo, with a passenger who sat back and smoked Marlboros and drank out of an orange Tennessee cup. Epperly, the track star, easily and quickly running back to the lake house, just after abandoning the Monte Carlo at the remote turnaround area, not even a mile, back to the lake house. And had Gina not named Steve, the question might be, would any of the others have come forward telling what they saw or even suspected after they heard the radio announcements? which some stated they heard Monday morning. And exactly what did they know? Let's consider what we know. So as far as the Barbell Club gossipers, King, the three buddies from the Marriott, and according to those interview depositions, even a relative of one of the guys, and he was a local policeman, in on the conversation. This policeman did not even go tell his fellow officers what had been discussed at the Barbell Club about the missing girl everyone was looking for, and that Steve Epperly was the Steve. Had anyone shared what they knew, wouldn't the police have been right there early on Tuesday, following up? Why would none of them come forward and offer any sort of help with the information known to help Gina's family? Telling what they discussed, what they knew, to do what was right for a family desperately seeking and searching for a young missing girl, a daughter, a sister, a loved one. That afternoon, after the early morning activities, King went on to work, and Epperly came by to see King. King said he told Epperly, "I'd go tell what you know if I were you, because it's not going to look good. Look like you're hiding something if you waited." That's what King said he told Epperly. And Epperly arrogantly and confidently went on to share with the police that he had been with the girl from the radio announcement because he chose to, not because the others knew or forced him or encouraged him. We're talking about Steve Epperly, a man they were all somewhat afraid of, except King. Epperly would have never came forward had Gina not named him. He did not plan on that. His Oscar performance began, and it was just another game to him. It is also a misconception that King came forward to help the police completely of his own free will. King only came forward, according to his own statement, after Epperly's first interview with Trooper Hall, when Trooper Hall gave specific instructions to Epperly to go tell King that Trooper Hall wanted to see him. And Epperly did. Here is exactly what King said transpired. On Tuesday evening, Steve came by my work site where I was painting a house, and Steve said Trooper Hall wanted to talk with me and that Trooper Hall had Ron Davis's name. That would be King's stepfather and the owner of the lake house. And King says that Epperly told him that Trooper Hall knew about Jan, Jimmy, and Bucky. Bet they wondered how. Well, remember Jan's earlier interview with Trooper Hall in our townhouse? That is how he already knew about the three. And now the two, Epperly and King, know the police know about the three. Scrambling time. King continues. Steve said for me to come up to his house later that evening and call Trooper Hall. Well, I did not want to at first, and later I ended up going up there around 10:30 p.m. We went upstairs in private, and I called Trooper Hall and scheduled the appointment for Wednesday at 1 p.m. It's important to note that Trooper Hall testified that he did not recall ever talking with King on the phone Tuesday night. What he does remember is going to find King on Wednesday afternoon there in Radford. King would tell me in our conversation in 2019 that he went to talk to his grandfather, who advised him to cooperate with the police, and that he then went straight and talked with a local attorney, naming that attorney. Why did he need to talk to an attorney? And that is odd, doing those things of your own free will, but not going to the police until you are told to, even though you heard a radio announcement about a missing girl. In Trooper Hall's first in-office meeting with Epperly Tuesday at 5 p.m., when Epperly came in to tell that he had been with the missing girl being announced on the radio, Epperly never mentioned King or Robinson's name. After that interview, Trooper Hall followed his instincts and said, "You know what, Epperly, do you mind? Let's take a ride out to the lake house." And they did. And it was during that ride, early Tuesday evening, that Epperly shares that King and Robinson came by the lake house. By Tuesday night, the general consensus was that most everyone believed Epperly's story. How do I know that was the initial consensus? I was there. My friends and I will never forget the local policeman who kept telling my dad and us that there was absolutely no way Steve Epperly had anything to do with Gina Hall being missing, and that everyone should be looking at Gina's friend and my boyfriend. And that happened. Thank heavens for Trooper Hall, because it was in this same time frame that I told what I had learned about Steve Epperly. As soon as we learned about Steve coming forward early Tuesday evening to give his story that everyone believed, within a few hours, I learned of Epperly's reputation of rape. This was written down by my husband's mother in his, hour by hour calls to her, and she took meticulous notes as he would call and inform her of what was going on back in Radford. Well, my future mother-in-law's exact, timely handwritten note for Tuesday evening said, "Police and family convinced that Epperly was clear, except for one, Delana. Delana does investigation on her own and finds out that Epperly had been charged with rape and assault previously. Delana tells police, who find it to be true." I included in my book a picture of my mother-in-law's note that I miraculously found in her home after her death. Her next recorded entry note for Wednesday was about Epperly's polygraph test. Learning that Epperly had an assault and rape record before the investigators saw the inside of that lake house late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, the blood, the violence, and my learning of his violent nature before that most likely came from one source, the Fisher family. The only local guy I really knew. The same guy whose mother told him I was looking for someone named Steve. The same guy who shared this story with his barbell buddies Tuesday morning. The same guy who was there with us in our townhouse sometime between finding the car Monday afternoon and knowing about Steve by Tuesday night. And Trooper Hall knew all of this before he interviewed King. So in my opinion, in an indirect way, it was Fisher who helped the dominoes fall. And for that I am grateful. During my visit with Fisher, he reminisced about the day he came by the townhouse that first week, sharing as long as he lives he would never forget coming by to see us, the chaos, and that I gave him a look he said he would also never forget. And I just thought to myself, I'm pretty sure I would have. I am the same woman today as I was then. But now I see. Wisdom. That visit was so very important. A crucial piece of the puzzle, knowing all of the pieces. God truly is amazing. The no coincidences were right there. Not only did we get Fisher's first early statement to Trooper Hall that was a pivotal point in my understanding what had transpired, 4-3, pancakes not, no mention of King early on. I also learned during that visit with Epperly of his violent history. Epperly and his violent history no doubt influenced us and others. We did not have the advantage of local knowledge of his violent history, of Epperly. I feel fairly confident there were locals who did. Had we not had this information, everyone convinced of Epperly's Oscar performance, the outcome of the case may have been different. What if all of us had just walked away and went home hoping the system would take care of everything? Sometimes we can't see the pieces of the puzzle when we're living it. The pieces being moved around so a specific outcome happens. Thank you, Jan Fisher. You helped more than you could ever know. God's amazing. Wednesday afternoon, Steve Epperly did fail the polygraph, a lie detector test, 7 times when asked directly, did you kill the Hall girl? And do you know where Gina Hall's body is? 7 times. But that polygraph was not admissible in court. Here is an interesting story that illustrates how easily a news story can be manipulated by the calculating Epperly. After his conviction, during the appeals, Epperly started whining to the reporters about wanting to be given a polygraph test, and he would tell the reporters, who actually repeated that what Epperly told them in a newspaper article. I call it the "oh, poor me" story. Here is what he told the reporters. I have asked the authorities for the opportunity to take a lie detector test so that I can prove my innocence, to prove I was framed, but they won't let me. The police won't give me one so I can show the whole world the truth. Yeah, that was reported, really. Well, I am positive Virginia State Police Investigator Sherwood, who administered the polygraph, was chomping at the bit to address the lie, but he could not. The state could not tell the public that Epperly had already had a polygraph or that he had failed it, because that would jeopardize the appeals trial, which went on for years, state and federal, and Epperly knew that. But once the appeals were exhausted, the state police investigator came out and immediately addressed that lie. Epperly is a manipulative, calculating man, and if he is ever granted an interview, any kind of interview, I promise you he will continue to play his games. I wondered if he ever does speak up. Do we have enough of the facts now to know what's truth and what's fiction? I always wondered what would happen if I got to meet with Epperly. What would he say if I were to show him the recent pictures of the places we have found? That would be interesting. That is exactly why I added some of those pictures into those short video clips, just in case Epperly sees them, wondering to himself, how did we find that out? Then we will see what happens. One of the many reasons Epperly was convicted was not anybody's but his own fault, his own mouth. But not in the trial, because he chose to not take the stand, but his own spoken words to everyone else during those early weeks, the arrogant Epperly, already confident, believing all along he would never be arrested. I imagine his conversations that summer with a high-cost defense attorney helped validate that nobody so no arrest comfort level. Even after arrested, even as he entered the courthouse for the trial, his confidence and arrogance still displayed in his face. He believed he could never get convicted with no body, no witness, no admission of guilt. Well, that surprise ending to the trial proved his own words implied admissible guilt. Ask your brother, what can they do to me without a body? Or they do not find the body. Stated twice by Epperly. It was his arrogance and confidence that reigned in his decision not to hire counsel. And it was not because he did not have any money. It is a misconception and just plain wrong to play the poor Epperly, poor family card. Epperly's family did not pay for his defense in 1976. Tom Hardy stated in a police report that Epperly received money from him personally for the defense in the 76 rape charges. hiring the best known defense attorneys. And they persecuted those brave women on the stand, and Epperly walked. During the arrest for his second back-to-back 76 rape, while Epperly was in jail, mass quantities of drugs were flushed down the toilet in Epperly's apartment by a family member. That was not chump change drug dealing. And I believe it was this financial and public experience in 76 that altered Epperly's future path. 4 more years. 4. A list of 100 women's names. According to an appeal trial, it is also known about Epperly's exact conversations in 1980 with that same high-paid defense attorney from 1976, Richard Lawrence, who consulted with Epperly that summer about Gina's no-body case. And that same attorney had a conversation with the prosecutor, telling Shockley he did not believe the state would gain a conviction without a body, according to appeals testimony. So I would certainly be curious what advice Epperly had been given that summer by that same high-paid defense attorney. Most believed that Epperly had no worries, because without a body, he'd never be convicted. That same attorney admitted in an appeal trial to providing counsel to Epperly when Epperly first moved to Roanoke. Moving because he told everyone he was being threatened. Interestingly, Epperly needed counsel prior to being arrested. But after arrested, Epperly kept the free, court-assigned attorneys by choice. Because after all, what was going to happen? There was no body. No one had ever been convicted in Virginia, and only 5 in the whole country with no body. So Epperly was most likely told by many not to worry, because the state would not have a case. That was why Epperly did not hire and pay them the thousands. Funny, though, how after he was convicted, the higher-paid defense attorneys, including Richard Neely, did show up on the scene. If I drew a circle and put Epperly in the middle and began connecting all of these people, highlighting drugs, specifically cocaine, as the interconnector, that would certainly shed some light on the threads of this web. To address the parents' financial difficulties, like raising the $50,000 bond money so their son could be released from jail for a month, money backed by the Epperly home that had been in the family for a very long time, passed down, and yes, it was unfortunate that his parents had to use their inherited home and a relative's home to reach that total bond amount. But let's not pretend that Epperly was at a socioeconomic disadvantage, because his dad was this good, wholesome poor man who worked hard for his money and had difficulty paying to help his 28-year-old son. I agree, socioeconomics did come into play, but it was not the poor side of that spectrum. The Epperlys are not the socioeconomic piece to this story. Wealth is power. There is a sad part to the Epperly family story, though, and it's not financial. Mrs. Epperly, a good, kind woman who just loved her son, and she was realistic about her son. She said in 1980, "There is no doubt in my mind my son killed the Hall girl." That's heartbreaking. Mrs. Epperly also told about her husband. This same wholesome man fought his wife for years, keeping her from seeking help for their son, Steve. According to her, their son, a brother who assaulted his own sister, this man's daughter, and he did nothing? I was told a brother who jabbed pencils into the heads, breaking the lead off into the scalp. A person whose mental instability began when he set his parents' home on fire. Lit gunpowder on the roof when he was 8 years old. This is the image of Epperly's father that I have. A man on Christmas who was so drunk that he fell down on the floor. He could not even get up, yelling out that he could not believe that his son went to jail because of a piece of a girl. Epperly's entire life fueled his evil. Everyone saw something, but no one did anything, except Mom did try once, following an attorney recommendation for an evaluation at St. Albans. But even that failed her. Pretty much everyone let him off. Kind of disgusts me to allude that the state spent all of this money on justice for Gina, but that the indigent Epperly did not have the same opportunity. His family having to spend money they did not have for their son's defense. The sharp-dressing Epperly had access to a lot of money, especially his good friend Tom Hardy. Interesting, too, where he learned that sharp dressing from. Seems like a young thrasher in his early years ran a clothing line and sold clothes. The same man who visited the police station with Epperly throughout those early weeks was Tom Hardy. Bottom line, Epperly most likely believed he would not lose, so why should anyone spend any money? Epperly knew beyond any doubt Gina's body would most likely never be found. He knew this within a few days, within a few hours. Confidence beyond just burying her in the woods somewhere. Confidence because it was not his first murder or his first hiding of a body. To quote another person who recently came into Gina's story, it was not his first rodeo. Actions define who we really are, and Epperly is not alone in his actions. Why would King, having just been with the police when they searched the lake house, allegedly having just come to know Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, what had actually gruesomely transpired in his own mother's home, behave without any heart, threatening use of a gun to a young man just simply trying to find Gina, the recipient of that violence? If that person had no guilt, no, threatened use of a gun was his action of choice. A day or so later, King's mom and stepdad returned home to be shocked to find a swarm of police surrounding their home. Search and rescue folks, divers, reporters, us, many people, not knowing anything about what had happened there a week earlier. We have a saying down here in the mountains, 2 peas in a pod. Actions speak truth. Where were those barbell boy clubs? Those guys, those barbell club guys that stuck together like glue? Did any of the involved persons, or associated persons I should say, because I think involved's too strong a word, did any of the associated persons actually help in any form or fashion of their own free will that entire summer as we searched everywhere? Actions speak louder than words. Epperly's brother Charles helped us search. Epperly's mother cooperated and encouraged help. One of Epperly's sisters and her husband helped us. Many people helped. Bill Cranwell stepped up to the plate and did what was right. By the end of the first week, Cranwell organized the meeting between my dad and Epperly. This is a story we, the family, will never forget. The day my daddy rode in the car with the killer of his daughter. And yes, a revolver in his pocket. Cranwell was the connecting piece between John Hall, his friend from college, and Epperly, an acquaintance of Cranwell. Cranwell's business partner, Tom Hardy, and a friend or associate or acquaintance of Cranwell's son. The police really had nothing much to do with it besides gathered on the side of Hazel Hollow Road at the boat landing near the trestle where they came back to after the meeting took place. Details of how that day transpired can be confirmed by Investigator Duffy's court testimony or Epperly's 1986 appeal testimony, where Cranwell and Epperly are both asked directly questions of what happened the day John Hall rode in the car with Epperly. And this is what is verifiable. It was not a big police affair, frisking Daddy with a gun, for a gun, and, it makes a good story, but it's just not true. my dad was riding in the car with Investigator Duffy, going down Hazel Hollow Road. And Cranwell and Epperly were in Cranwell's car. And the cars passed each other. So the exchange from one car to another happened at the end of Hazel Hollow Road, at the intersection with Crater Dam Road. And yes, we back at the townhouse knew this meeting was going to happen. We talked about it. Duffy confirms in later court testimony that Daddy got out of Duffy's car and walked over and got into the car with Cranwell and Epperly, and they drove off towards the lake. Daddy sat in the back seat, taking note of Epperly. Cranwell testified in an appeals trial that he drove to a high spot near the lake, and they sat there looking out over the lake and talked, about 10 to 20 minutes. It seemed longer to my dad, understandably. I believe on that Sunday, when my dad left to go to this arranged meeting, not with police involvement, Cranwell, thank you, that he believed there was still hope that Gina might be somewhere and he could be the one to get Epperly to help us. Epperly being the last one that had been known to be with Gina. But sometime during that visit, I imagine fairly quickly, because my dad would have seen right through Epperly, just as would Gina. Even if there had been one dance, Gina would have seen through that. His hope changed because when he returned, he shared that he watched every move of Epperly's head in hopes that Epperly would just give us a slight turn, a clue so we would know where to go back and look for Gina's body. He came back knowing beyond any doubt that Gina was dead. His small thread of hope that he held on to was gone. He knew he needed Epperly to tell us, or we might never find Gina's body. And it is nothing short of an absolute miracle that my dad did not shoot Epperly right in the back of the head that day. My daddy had faith. He had strength beyond words. He did not kill his daughter's rapist and murderer that day, but he certainly could have. And I say this with caution. Had Epperly been arrested earlier, in my opinion, Ohio Vicky Cook might still be alive. Even though Epperly was on the police's radar, he still had not been charged. So Epperly left for Ohio in August, telling the Virginia State Police that he needed to go to Ohio to work because he owed some people some money. Convenient excuse, because Cranwell said he had not paid on those loans for years. While in Ohio, within 20 miles of where Epperly was staying, with a friend, a young teacher was murdered, and this young woman shared the same name as a 1980 RU student. Different woman, same name. Simple question. What really prompted Epperly to go to Ohio? After her murder, my dad raised the reward to try to escalate Epperly's arrest in Virginia, hoping to locate Gina's remains so Epperly could be charged and taken off the street. Epperly finally got arrested, charged, and convicted. My opinion, especially in light of what I know now, that was God running that chess game. So who was the girl they did not know? I can tell you who she was not. The girl portrayed by their composed story. I can tell you what none of them expected. John R. Hall. I share Gina's voice in these videos for my daddy, too. A man who lived a life of significance. And I have no doubt John Hall has Jesus' ear. What chess piece will be the one that makes the final checkmate move that ends this chess game? But no, it's not a game.